Roland Willits.
Thank you. It was wonderful that you invited me here. And I have a club called Omen Stories. And the significance of it is I go and I find people that have life stories and I listen. And a lot of times I record them. And the significance of it is that we as humans, our hardest thing to do is love that most important person, yourself. I found if I get someone to tell a story, a little bit more love is there. And as you start telling stories, what you find in your life is sometimes magic stories happen. And this is a magic story. My magic story. I spent 35 years over in Fremont, California. And during that time, I've been successful in business. I bought an office building. And down at the bottom, I said, you know what would be beautiful is to set up a wonderful art gallery and see if I think I could make money at an art gallery, and it'd be wonderful. Well, I started my art gallery and I brought in these paintings from all these wonderful people. But one day, I had a visit. And this old fella came in, he was sort of ragged, and he came in, he says, I want to sell you something, or I want you to help me sell it. I says, why? He says, I'm a contractor. Well, a contractor, what kind of... I thought maybe he got something, stole something. He says, no, and I says, I have a gold mine up in the things, and I find all these great stones, and I carve them out, and they're all in my personal collection, but I'm not collecting from this fella that owes me money, and I need money bad. I says, well, why don't you bring money? He says, I got one in the back of my truck. He says, my pickup. And I went out there, he had a cover and a thing. I says, okay, what do you have? So he went over and pulled this cover off. And I looked and went, you're kidding me. He had these beautiful dolphins, 2 dolphins together, carved out of this beautiful marble that he had picked out of the Sierras. I says, wow. He said, and here's another one. He flipped it up. And it was an alabaster. And it was, he did a white buffalo. Well, all of you know a white buffalo is magic. I says, wow, this is cool. And so I said, sure. So we took him up and we put him in a nice place in the studio. And I said, man, this would be great working with you and selling. And I says, good. So he came back a couple weeks later. He says, I want to thank you, Roland, so much for helping me. What can I do? I thought, and I says, well, this guy's magic. I says, what you could do is find a magic staff for me. He said, okay, Roland, I'll do that. I was so joking, you know. But I did want a magic staff, by the way, because I am a wizard. And so he came back 2 weeks later and he said, Roland, I've got a special treat for you. I just have a wonderful treat. So he went out and he came back in and he says, I've got your magic staff for you. And he pulled it out and he says, here it is, Roland, your magic staff. I says, that's wonderful. I says, what's ahead? He said, it's a snake. I says, oh, it's not a dragon? I said, I'm a wizard, I should have a dragon. No, I didn't say that, but I thought that. I says, it's beautiful. He says, yes, it's a snake. And I look, I says, a snake. Snake in the grass, you know. I had all negatives on the thing, but I said, thanks for that. He says, it's magic, Roland. I guarantee it's magic. So I named it. It's Fred. His name is Fred, by the way. I didn't want to, build its ego up, call it some fancy name. I just called it Fred. Well, Fred joined me, and he said, Roland, he says, I found this up in the mountains. He says, I was digging out for gold with my Caterpillar. And he said, I looked over the hood, and up on a hill, I saw a manzanita tree. And this came right out of the manzanita tree. He says, I saw it. He said, I had to crawl through all this stuff. I got scratches all over me. He says, I pulled it up. He says, it's exactly the way you see it, except I put the eyes in. Okay? And I put a little mouth. I cut a little spot for the mouth. He says, but that's it. That's your magic staff, which is a snake. A little side note. Moses had 3 staffs. 2 of them were snakes, right? Oh, well, I didn't know this till years later, but I said, oh, wow. I got myself a staff. So I set it on my desk, and next day, a lady came in. And she says, can I work for you? I said, I don't know if I have I am really having, I'm having a hard time with it. I don't know if I can do it. She says, oh, a staff, a snake, wow. She says, I've got some videos I want to show you, some VHSs at the time. She says, you'll love it. This was done at Lucas Ranch, George Lucas Ranch. It was an interview. And I can't remember the fellow that did it, but he was an expert in religions. She says, you have to watch this. It totally references snakes. I says, oh, it's 2 days. Wow, snake, okay. So that night, I started watching about 6 in the evening, and I finished about 5 in the morning, watching these one right after another. And what he said, he says, snakes got a bad deal. They got rooked. He says, most religions think snakes are something where you shed, and you have a new life, and you shed, and you have a new life. You shed, and you have a new life. He says, I think someone did a bad job on interpreting what the Bible had. Snakes are cool. Well, I liked that. I was going to buy that. I mean, Moses had one, so they had to be cool. But I says, wow. Well, what happened then was my buddy invited me up to Paradise. So I went to Paradise, California. Okay? And I went up to Paradise, and he had this beautiful spot where he had his mine up in the Sierras, and we went, and I got to drive in the Caterpillar. Man, I love driving Caterpillars. Wow, that was just awesome. And that evening he says, come on, let's go to a restaurant. I have a great restaurant in Paradise, Chinese. Wow. I looked and I said, Chinese, they have great Chinese in San Francisco. But you go somewhere else in the country and you randomly hope for good food. And we went to the Chinese restaurant, and it was awesome. And when they came out, they put this mat in front of me. I looked, wow, look at that. The year you were born. Guess what year I was born in? The year of the snake.